And that's what it is to be a saint. To be a saint is simply to try and follow Jesus, to try and do what God calls us to do, to try. That's it. Often we'll look at stained glass windows in big old cathedrals and other symbols. We'll see people with the letters ST in front of them and we think, oh, you got to be perfect. Oh, you got to be really good. Oh, you've got to be this, you've got to be that. And we also sometimes even think, oh, you've got to have died. But that has never been the definition of a saint. The definition of a saint is someone who's set apart to try and follow Jesus. That's good news because that means we all qualify, I think. I was sharing earlier that, if letters in the New Testament, right, they're generally addressed to the saints in such and such church. And I thought, if a letter ever came to us that was written or addressed to the perfect people at First United Church, I couldn't open it because I don't qualify. But if it were addressed to the people at First United Church who are trying to follow Jesus, I could rip that thing right open. Any of us could. Because that's all we can do. When you do it, you put yourself in a unique category of people that the world doesn't like very much. What a great place to be, huh? Or not. I love how Jesus ends the Beatitudes, says, you're blessed when everybody talks down to you, when everybody laughs at you, when everyone pokes fingers at you, when people say, oh, you're one of those goody two-shoes Christians. Oh, you always think that you can change the world. Oh, you always think you can do good stuff. Oh, you think that there are better ways to do it. Nyeh, nyeh, nyeh. It's nonsense. When people do that, it probably means we're doing something right. Now, we're in an interesting season of the year. If you go to many, not quite all, but many stores, you will have learned by now that Christmas is coming within seconds. It isn't quite, but that's the impression they'd like you to have. And we're going to hear a word pretty soon, I think, because we hear it most years around this time. It's a word, it's an expression rather, it's two words. I find them filthy, I find them disgusting, I find them horrific, because they're used in a really nasty and mean and bad way. You don't have to cover your ears, but the words are politically correct. You ever heard that? We're going to hear it. I know we are. If you're south of the border, you're going to hear it even more, but you're going to hear it. Last year, I remember a particular scandal that happened in the U.S. over Starbucks cups. Now, I don't know if any of you think that Starbucks, are the key witnesses to our Christian faith, but apparently they're supposed to be. I don't think they knew that either. What was fascinating was the complaint that was leveled against Starbucks. Their cups had stopped printing stockings and trees on them and replaced the stockings and trees with snowflakes. And they were challenged for being not for being Christian, but for being anti-Christian. For taking stockings off of coffee cups. Just for the record, I think that's kind of a big leap. A stocking on a coffee cup does not say, Christ is born, the world has changed to me. In fact, what it says is something about a festival of stuff and hanging a stocking hoping you get something in it. And that's not really what Christmas is about. Now, I know it's early for Christmas, and in theory I should be waiting until December when it's Advent to do the talking about it. But we got to get ready for the season of getting ready. Because this year it was in mid-August that I saw my first Christmas decoration in a store, I swear to God. Mid-August. I almost want to think, just leave them up, but... People are going to tell us that there's certain ways to celebrate this season and that everybody ought to do it. We're going to hear the challenge that when we say, hey, maybe Christmas is something that Christians should be celebrating. It doesn't have to be everybody. we'll be challenged with being told that we're trying to be politically correct. I've not understood what's wrong with trying to be inclusive. I just don't get it. See, I think Christians ought to celebrate Christmas with absolutely every fiber of our being. But to celebrate Christmas is to think long and hard about what it means to us that God loved the world so much that God came in Jesus Christ to change and save the world. And how are we going to respond to that? That's what Christmas is about. And I invite you to do whatever works for you as a Christian to celebrate that. But we will be told repeatedly by the world out there that there are proper ways we should do it. The biggest one of those, of course, involves spending every penny that we have so that we can start spending the pennies we don't have. So that we can have a huge orgy extravaganza of spending. Because that's what December has turned into, and it has absolutely nothing to do with God trying to change the world. We'll hear people who will get very upset with the expression season's greetings, which interestingly has been around for a long time. It is not a new invention. I personally tend to say Merry Christmas to people because I'm a Christian. It's my festival. But I'm also trying to be sensitive to people who I know it means nothing to because they're not Christian. And I make no apologies for saying, I don't think everybody needs somehow to express Christmas or there's something wrong with them. So, okay, Cheryl talked about Easter and we all thought she was off on her holiday, and here I am talking about Christmas and we're thinking, hold on, it's still just All Saints' Day. But to be a saint is to be apprenticed to Jesus, as the scripture said. To be a saint is to go against the world. I would dare to say almost always. If we are going to be true to the teachings of Jesus Christ, if we are going to be true to the call of God that comes to us in Jesus Christ, we are going to really tick off the world. Not just at Christmas time, although that's when the world really notices, because they think they know what it means to be a Christian. But most of the time, if we're doing it right, if we're doing our faith right, we are going to live differently, we are going to behave differently, we are going to do things so differently, the world is going to look at us and go, what's going on? You're being nice to people that aren't nice. You're not standing up saying, I'm right and you can just agree with me or else. You're saying things like, okay, I think this is right, but let's talk about your point of view as well and let's see if we can find a way to get along instead of beating each other up. That isn't really, or that shouldn't at least be that insanely radical. If we're Christians, we're going to realize that we need to hunger and thirst for God in our lives. Not just once in a while, all the time. We have to recognize, as that wonderful line from The West Wing, I think I've shared it before, was, if they're shooting at you, you must be doing something right. If we're going to live our faith, we have to know that people are going to sneer at us occasionally. People are going to throw things at us, if not literally, at least figuratively. We have to recognize that life is not always going to go our way. That's what it is to be a saint. To dare to hang on to our principles. To dare to live them. To dare to live the way of Jesus Christ. I thank the saints represented here and the others that I remember in my mind. The people who have modeled for me that you can live differently, you can follow Christ, you can do what God asks, and it's a good thing. Happy All Saints' Day. Let us be the saints of God.